And go.
Good morning, good evening, good day, wherever you are in the world. We are so happy that we have you with us here today. Today, we are having an exciting discussion. Our discussion is on back to school and co-parenting. And I have some phenomenal women with me today. I have Wendy Perry, Dr. Sally, and Jasmine Bennett. And I'm going to give them a second. In just a second, I'm going to let them introduce themselves. I am Dawn McCarty, and I work with Kids Need Both to help heal families, making sure that kids have both parents, even after divorce and separation, and how important it is that children identify their relationships with each parent. I am an adult survivor of parental alienation myself and abduction, and I bring a voice to children as an adult to help pave the way into finding methods that will heal adult survivors, but also help prevent children going forward as they grow into adults from having to deal with some of the dealing with the trauma as they grow up, so that they can face that and have an environment where they can thrive. So let me go ahead and let these amazing ladies introduce themselves. Let me start with Jasmine. Would you please introduce yourselves, and we'll just pass it right on.
Absolutely. A good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jasmine Bennett, and I am a mother, an educator, and a host here in Polk County, Florida. I have a background in education. I'm still an educator. I have served in roles as a classroom teacher for 11 years, a reading coach, an assistant principal for 5+ years, and as a testing coordinator and a Title I coordinator. And I am currently someone who co-parents with my children's father. I have 2 boys. He will be 13 on the 24th. I have to pinch myself because I can't believe it. But I will be having a 13-year-old very soon who's in 8th grade, and I have a 2nd grader who's 7. So I'm very passionate about the topic of co-parenting. So I thank you for inviting me on this panel, and I can't wait to get into the discussion.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm really looking forward to what you have to contribute. Dr. Sally, would you like to go next?
Absolutely. Again, it is a pleasure to be here with these lovely ladies and this wonderful panel. Want to thank Danica for having the vision to put this in place, and I'm excited to hear and contribute to the discussion on today. My background is as similar to you ladies is in education. Started with a degree in journalism, and then moving to Florida, began my career in education as a dean, and then matriculated up through the ranks as a assistant principal and then a principal. I have over 25 years of experience as an administrator. And one of the highlights of my career is my last role in the brick and mortar was at a post-secondary collegiate high school program. And I was fortunate to actually start the 2nd charter on their campus, on the college campus, as the founder. About 2015, went into working in the community advocacy. I'm passionate about working with the underserved and the underrepresented, and have found that parents that were underserved in schools oftentimes grow up to be underserved as an adult. And so dealing with those challenges, many of which you've kind of alluded to, Dawn, were evident in working with parents in many different roles, but most importantly, when I met Danica and began to work alongside her with Kids Need Both as a co-parenting instructor. And that has truly been a blessing and I believe, a benefit and hope for the clients that I traditionally serve as a consultant with Compass Smart Solutions Educational Consultant. So wear lots of hats, but the one that I am most excited about is that of a mother. I have a daughter, was a single mother for about 5 years when her father and I divorced, and we've been co-parenting even as she is 21 years old. Scheduled to start University of South Florida in the fall, and we are all excited about the opportunities that's going to bring for her. So thank you for having me, and it's good to be here.
That's awesome. Awesome. I can't wait to hear more about what you're going to bring to the table. And lastly, let's go with Wendy. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, thank you so much for having me on this amazing panel. And I want to start by saying, when I hear that Jasmine and Dr. Sally are successfully co-parenting, Yay! That that just makes me want to cheer. And
That's my favorite subject, co-parenting.
well, you know, Dawn, we hear stories every day about people who are not able to co-parent amicably or successfully. And so whenever we hear someone say, we're doing it, we're co-parenting, it just really does make you want to cheer, because we know the downside of that not happening. We know what that does to children. It breaks their hearts, it breaks their spirits, and it's so important. So when I hear that, I just want to applaud and you know, just say that is awesome. And that is the most important, best thing you can do for your kids if you're no longer going to be with the other parent. So my name is Wendy Perry, and I am an alienated parent due to parental alienation. I've got 3 kids, and I was alienated from 2 of my 3 kids, and I'm reunified with one of them. I'm still alienated from another one. And then one of my kids I was never alienated from. And I always like to share that so that people know, wherever you are in the journey of parental alienation, I've been there. I understand. I was never alienated from one. I am still alienated from one. I've been alienated for about 12 years from her, but I have also gone through a reunification, which is quite an experience. And I work in the areas of support and education. I am certified by the Texas Education Agency to train school teachers, school counselors, and school administrators of all grade levels on the subject of parental alienation here in Texas. And I run private support groups for alienated parents, alienated grandparents, and we do have some step parents in our private support groups as well. And that's a really important, it's really important to have good support groups for people dealing with parental alienation. And so I'm just happy to be on this panel today. So thanks for having me.
We're so happy to have you here as well. And, you know, as a child that didn't have my parents living together, I would have given anything had I had the opportunity to have access to both parents. And that's why I really love working with amazing people like you, so that children can have access to both of their parents, that they can learn how to co-parent successfully. So when I say co-parenting is my favorite subject, I know we would all prefer to have our parents stay together, you know, but in the event that that can't take place, it's great for the child to be able to continue having a relationship with both parents independent of their divorce. So I admire what you ladies do and the efforts that you are putting out there to make sure that this is coming to reality, that we can teach and educate and reach so many more people. And before we dive in, I want to, Danica, do you want to take a second to talk about what we're doing with Kids Need Both?
Sure. So this has been a 20+ year journey for myself in creating Kids Need Both, and its mission as a nonprofit is to provide services, to work with families who are dealing with high conflict custody situations. And part of that journey is we discovered that there were so many professionals who were unsupported that wanted to make a difference. And so now our mission has not only evolved to helping with the outcomes of individual parents, but we also are causing the effective leadership of the professionals that are in that heart profession that want to help with families going through separation and divorce and custody situations. So we created a community called Hope for Families that is a collaborative community of all the professionals such to be of service to the individual families. And if you ever want to find out more about that, just go to kidsneedboth.org or hit us up on Messenger, and we'd be happy to share.
Thank you. So our topic today, you know, it is the season of going back to school for many children. So we're talking about co-parenting in that type of environment. And I know that you ladies have spoken so much already about what you do in these situations in the schools. Wendy, you teach an awful lot in the school system itself, Dr. Sally. So what does back to school co-parenting mean to you? And this is going to be an organic kind of conversation. I don't want to kind of like keep us in a one line of questioning. I kind of want to have your ability. I want you to express what it means to you and be able to have this holistic kind of conversation. So feel free to just speak openly about that.
All right. Well, I'll jump right in. I think that in the current climate that we are moving into, having come out of the pandemic from the last summer, which seems like it was very, very short. I don't know about you all, but it just seemed like 1 minute was May and now it's August again, and we're back. And I know that in my research and looking at different environments in the schools that I work with, one of the things that has risen to the top, as a consultant, I do SACS accreditation. And believe it or not, schools that are moving towards their accreditation status, they're doing this online. How the entire accreditation process is an online process. So we're still going into schools and looking at all of those pieces. But here's the interesting piece. Whenever I've done focus groups, interviews with the parents, the number one question that comes to the top of the leaderboard is communication about what's going on with COVID, not being able to get into the schools because of the different safety protocols, having to find out what's going on with the students and what's going on with other students that may not be a part of their family. All of those things have caused a bit of a challenge, so to speak, and frustration and disappointment. And I think that one of the key factors in having a successful school years from an administrative standpoint would be acknowledging that those scenarios are in play and looking at how those strategies and solutions can be put into effect to kind of diminish that by communicating, early on. There were still, one of the local schools that I'm working with, there are still some parents that don't know what the current CDC recommendations are. And so all of those things right here in Polk County, we get information turn around pretty quick from the local school district, I do believe. But I think overall, that is the number one thing that I have seen throughout the summer. And it still seems to be a trending to the top of communication is key when it's dealing with how these different scenarios. It may be one day, and I'll end with this, maybe one scenario in protocol today on a Friday and come back Monday and it's a different protocol in place. And I see Jasmar smiling. So those are some of the things that I think are really going to create some conundrums in schools because, it's an ever evolving scenario.
Sure.
So,
and then if you throw in the whole co-parenting element to it, where
absolutely.
you have parents co-parenting successfully, but what happens when they're not on the same page at all?
A lot happens.
Right.
Yeah, I can imagine.
You know what? And I think with that and being, actually, I run our school's social media outlets. And so I go into that particular topic thinking as a co-parent, because in our co-parenting dynamic, I'm more so the person who's going to be the liaison for school. That's the role that I have. And so I try to equip their father with different technology sites that he needs to go on with, different, I would say different resources, because as a co-parent, I just always think, okay, this is what life looks like here with mom. And then this is what life looks like here with dad. But what if one of those entities disappears? Absolutely. And I always want him to be able to pick up wherever I may leave off, and vice versa. And so when it comes to the school piece, and then when it comes to notifying parents, whenever we do a school messenger, and school messenger is like my best friend, although I know that parents hate when we kind of overuse it, but it's so critical, because if both parents' information is connected to school messenger, then both parents are getting that message at the same time, which is fair. And then I think it just, the day and age and the time that we're in right now, it just prompts both parents to really take that responsibility to be well versed with the needs of their kids, because the school aspect, the health aspect, we all have to be on one accord with that. So school messenger is very important. Parent portal is a lifesaver. So it's really like organizations like what you do, Dr. Sally Stone, like when you're that liaison for parents, it's great to have these hubs where any parent can come and get that information, whether or not you are in a nurturing co-parenting situation, or if you're just a passionate parent who will stop at nothing to make sure that your children are, well taken care of. So I always try to approach whatever I'm doing with the lens of all stakeholders. And even as a co-parent, it has made it that much more important that the message goes out equitable. So
wow, that is so wonderful to hear, that you do look at it through the lens of a co-parent. Unfortunately, I would say a lot of school administrators don't do that because they have not had that experience.
Right.
They have not been in that position. And so, Dawn, when you say, well, what does co-parenting back to school mean to you or look like to you? I would say, for me, a lot of it is the parent end of it. And I can totally confirm what Jasmar and Dr. Sally are saying about the situations at schools being very fluid and still changing all the time with COVID, and regulations are changing all the time. My daughter that I'm reunified with is a school teacher. And so, I see her experience this every week. But what I wanted to mention is, if you are an alienated parent, or what we would call a targeted parent due to parental alienation, that means you don't have a great co-parent like Jasmar who's going to pass the information on to you. In fact, they're going to probably try to prevent you from getting information. And so many things can happen, as Dr. Sally was saying, it can really create a lot of issues. But what I would say to those parents, if you're watching this, is you must really be proactive. Right. From the beginning of the school year, actually before the school year even starts, during the time of registration and signing up for those parent portals that Jasmar was talking about. You have to be proactive, and you have got to do your part to get involved from the very start. And you cannot and you should not rely on the other parent or the school. You've got to be proactive and do that for yourself. And so I think that's the other piece of it, is it's really great when we hear about schools who are mindful that there might be two households and they've got to make sure that both parents are on the parent portals and get all of the information. That is really great. And that's what we hope to see. But unfortunately, that's not always the case, and a lot of times not the case. And so I would say the other piece of this, it's really a two-sided relationship. It's the school and the parent. And as the parent, you've got to be proactive, like I said, in getting your foot in the door and building good relationships with the people at the school before the school year even starts. And Danica and I have actually done a few shows on this before. So I would say start your school year off right. If you are an alienated or a targeted parent. And one thing that I would recommend, and probably Danica would back me up on this, is get yourself a really good parenting coach now before the school year starts, to help you get your school year started off on the right foot.
I want to add, I want to jump in and add to actually what you just said, Wendy, in that, getting off on the right start. And when I made the comment that there is a lot, when you think about the dynamic of, just the challenges that you are dealing with in a co-parenting situation without COVID. And so, just imagine a scenario where two parents have been, I'll use myself as an example. So my ex-husband and I were co-parenting with my daughter, and then my current husband has a co-parent as well. So we have a blended scenario, but just imagine a situation where one parent had a different altogether point of view about how to proceed forward than another parent. You know, one parent is mask on, the other parent says mask off. And so now you are dealing and bringing this to the school environment, particularly from the aspect of the child's thought process and being successful when I go back to school. You know, some parents are, I know in Polk County, the decision was left up to parents whether for them to wear the mask or not wear a mask. And then the student, as one parent shared with me, well, they're gonna take masks with them to school. And if a situation arises wherein they feel like they need to put the mask on, then they will. If not, then they won't. So just imagine that additional information that now the child has to process with between the two parents and in the school setting. And so I really believe what Wendy said, having a support group, having a parenting coach, you know, joining in with other parents in a virtual, you know, more workshops and seminars, and co-parenting being something more than what a court requires you to do because you need to fulfill that part of the stipulation for a custody plan. So I think that is real key, that parents are going to have to take advantage of the resources that are out there and apply them, not just know about them, but apply them.
Yeah, and some of the things that I've heard you ladies, all three of you, talk about that I really like. I like the fact that there's communication that both parents are receiving at the same time. I think that's important, that we're not relying on one parent to deliver that information to the other parent. And I like the parenting coach idea, because oftentimes we may not realize, or we may not remember how to have a civil conversation with somebody after we've gone through a battle of our lifetime, really, in some instances. So sometimes we have to remember that we still need to communicate with that person regardless of our feelings, because you are connected for life. And from that child's perspective, the child doesn't want to see their parents arguing all the time. They want to see their parents putting down their differences and coming together, because school is all about the child. And when the child's going to school, that's all they care about. They don't want to hear all the other stuff. So I really like what you're saying. And my question is, how prevalent is this throughout the school systems? Is this 1 in a million, or, you know, is it not a million, but you know what I mean? Yeah. Is this only few and far between, or is this starting to take place in more and more schools?
Right. I think one of the things you have to consider is the grade level. I think the dynamics that play out in K or pre-K through, 5 look a little bit different from middle school. As a dean in middle school, it's kids run everywhere, hit everything. They are just totally focused on figuring out who they are. And then in high school, they may be a little bit more mature. So I think each different grade level is going to bring a set of challenges that have to be dealt with, as it relates to that particular age group. That would be, but I think we're going to maybe find a lot more, for lack of a better word, difficulty and challenges in the lower grades.
You are. I can attest to that point. And as I was gearing up to be a part of this panel discussion, I just kept reminiscing about a situation that came up with parents who obviously did not have a great co-parenting dynamic, and it was a whole lot of it was a court battle going on back and forth. And I just remember, again, me coming from that perspective of, thinking that each parent has the, equal rights with kids, because, you just think it's their child and both of them love this child equally. And I'm just looking through court documentation and then just being hit with what we as educators, as school leaders, are able to do. And sometimes our hands are tied, because then it comes down to who's the enrolling parent. And that enrolling parent has basically more so of the rights than the parent who's not the enrolling parent. And so simple things such as wanting to see the child for their birthday. And this is why I said I can attest to the younger grades, because elementary is my primary background. I'm at a K-8 now, But I know definitely in elementary, these issues come up because, this parent wants to come and say, well, I don't have custody of him and I haven't seen him in 2 weeks. She or he hasn't brought them on their scheduled day and I just want to see them. And it puts us in such a situation where it's a gray area. And so I just think that, I just look back and I'm like, had I known about organizations like the ones that you guys have started, and that are so passionate about, I just really wish I could have passed that resource on to them. I've always tried to do my best to try to be the voice of reason, but in terms of a legal sense and legalities, it's a fine line that we go through. And I just remember just being caught up in a situation where it's like, it's not your job as the school administrator to decipher what this court ruling says. That's not what your job is. That's between the parents. And so when you put it back into the parents' court, it's tough, especially when you have a dynamic where the co-parenting just really does not exist. So I how relevant it is relevant, especially when you're talking about those elementary school kids. So your work is great. And I would love to share your information and your groups along to our parents because it's critical. And I'm a data person. And so I always try to slide in and slide in different statistics about, what a great outcome this would be if you guys could work together because, kids who come from a nurturing background, they're succeeding more. They want to, they excel more. Their emotional well-being is better. So I've just always tried to kind of put those snippets in without being too pushy with parents because it's an emotional situation that goes on that I've discovered over the years.
Yeah. Wendy, you work in school systems quite a bit there in Texas. And what are you seeing?
Well, I was going to mention the statistics because Jasmine was saying she's interested in statistics and we were talking about how prevalent is this in schools. A study was done at Colorado State University a few years ago, and Dr. Jennifer Harmon was one of the people who did this study, and their study came up with the numbers that 20 million parents in the United States are alienated from their kids at some level, and then they converted that into number of children, and that number converted to 40 million children in the United States dealing with some level of parental alienation. So the number is huge. And I think based on that number, we have to assume that it's pretty prevalent in schools. And I think, and I hope that schools are getting more accustomed to hearing about co-parenting and talking about co-parenting. And I know when I started advocating a little over 10 years ago, it just still wasn't talked about very much. And you see, even now in the media, people are talking about it more. Like if a celebrity couple gets divorced,
Right.
what's the first thing you see on the news? They announce, we're going to co-parent. So it's really, but this is good. We've made a lot of progress with the general public, just knowing the terms co-parenting and parental alienation, and to talking about it, and to people supporting it and understanding how really important it is.
Yeah, I agree. And it's so interesting that you make that point, Wendy, because I think when people hear co-parenting, many times they connect it to, what celebrities do, or those that have had to, do a custody plan may have an understanding. But I think part of the dilemma is not having enough awareness and information. And that's why the work that Danica's doing and that you all are doing as well, as it specifically relates to co-parenting and parental alienation, is so important, because we are only beginning to talk about, if you would, mental health wellness amongst K through 12. And so that definitely fits under the wheelhouse of, wellness for young people. But imagine how difficult it has been to even get that into curriculum and into, a plan of action, or a school improvement plan, or a student plan of any type. So I think that there has to be a lot of work, but it's not that the resources are not there, is that connecting that in a way that it is relevant, as I like to say, SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. That it has to be I saw you smile, Jasmine. I know you, once a data person, always a data person.
Right.
Throw it out there. But I think that is one of the biggest things, that how can advocacy move from the community level, which I think it is, into the school level as a requirement, because when it's optional, you have some administrators that will do because they're passionate, or like Jasmine, they have experience like myself in that arena. But what about those who have never, had to deal with the scenario? It's a little bit more difficult to get that into perspective, I think.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'd like to chime in on, a lot of times it's not been distinguished.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times alienate, and it is we can find it in sitcoms that came out in the 60s. Think about the Brady Bunch.
Right.
Where's mom? Where's dad? There's just no explanation as to what happened to the bio parent that's no longer there. There's 2.5 Men. There's a situation, a difficult co-parenting situation. And just recently I was watching a rerun, and mom just declared, sorry, dad, you're not picking up our son. And she had this whole women's support group that were all, giving him the stink eye and said, and it's these things that when we've been the target of hostile, aggressive parenting, it is so, like, you realize it's always been there. We just, people haven't distinguished it.
That's right. Very good point.
Well, I'm so glad that Dr. Sally, that you mentioned curriculum. This is going a little bit in a different direction, but I think where we need to even head in the future, and we've got a lot of work to do to get there, but we need to get this education and information into the curriculum that is age appropriate for the students. But there is no reason under the sun that I've been able to figure out that we cannot get this into the curriculum, especially for high school kids. Right. And in fact, I had a high school reach out to me several years ago, and the students wanted to interview me for their student newspaper. And it was a very candid Q&A conversation about parental alienation. So the kids know about it and they want to talk about it, and they want to know, what do I do? What can I do if this is my situation with my parents? My parents, what they say is, my parents hate each other, and it's ruining my life. And in most high school curriculums now, they do touch on relationships, marriage, divorce, and, other relationships, and mental health. And I've gone through high school textbooks looking for this. They talk about personality disorders, and all of these things tie into parental alienation. So, there's no reason we can't put a couple paragraphs in there about co-parenting and parental alienation and why it's important. We could start teaching kids in school, look, if this presents itself in the future, here's what you can do and why it's very important to mental health.
Exactly.
And so I that's, like I said, in the future, we've got some work to get there for sure, but I really, really, really hope that day comes, sooner rather than later.
And imagine students that have been going through that scenario, through that process, and, it is impacting their, their health and wellness. I mean, we talk a lot about health, safety, and wellness for students. And imagine those that are going through that finally have a descriptor for what they're dealing with, as opposed to, just go sit down somewhere, a lot of times, as Monica said, the actual what is taking place is very well defined. It's just that they don't make that connection. When you have a parent who always say, well, you can't go unless your dad can pick you up, or you can't do this, or your mom won't, I send child support, so therefore you can't play sports, because, we know the drill, right? We're familiar with the many scenarios, but imagine if there was a codified, a scientifically based approach to putting that into the hands of instructors and coaches and administrators, so they can help students identify, and then they don't feel so helpless. I think that's one of the things they feel, nobody else is dealing with this, and what am I going to tell somebody,
Well, especially the older kids, the older kids
Exactly.
they're kind of starting to figure things out, but what they're not figuring out is how to deal with the way they
Right.
feel and what's
Right.
going on inside of them, and how does that relate to what mom and dad are doing, and then how is that affecting me at school? Is it affecting my relationships at school now? Is it affecting my grades? There's all kinds of things that I think if we had something like that, it would help improve the school environment for the
Right.
children
Right.
and less impact on them.
I mean, we can and should teach kids skills they can use if they are in this situation.
And, what comes to me is gatekeepers. There are different gatekeepers. We definitely need parents who are targeted, parents to be educated on how to, what's best for their child. Obviously, some people are not interested. They're so emotional that they're not interested in the best interest of their child because they're too busy surviving their co-parent. However, and I would say the gatekeepers are in survival as well. The school administration and even the court system, they don't have the answers. So therefore, they're just doing the best they can, flying by the seat of their pants. And when you've got a really big, very charming parent coming into a school system that has no structure for how they're going to deal with co-parenting situations, they could easily have the teachers and administration as accomplices to their warfare.
Absolutely. It makes me think of your book, Danica, and the story, when someone has more affluence, more influence, and more resources than that parent that is, just trying to survive in a hostile parenting environment, really kind of, gets it makes it even more challenging because they don't want to speak up, because parents can be well connected. They can utilize their influences in areas that just make it difficult to even get a set of eyes on what's going on. And I think that happens in more cases than, I would care to even think about, to be honest.
I think that's true we have some parents that are introverts and some that are extroverts. I think clear down to that very basic level that can happen as well, just in a personality, not necessarily, it could be the affluence, but also just as introverted parent may not speak out.
That's right.
That's actually part of the training that I do when I go into schools, is talking about to treat both parents equally and to honor both of their parental rights. And it's not about their physical appearance or even how they present themselves, because this is one of the biggest problems with parental alienation, is many times the alienating parent, who we can say is an abuser, right? Parental alienation is a form of child abuse. So the alienator will often present themselves to teachers and school administrators as the perfect parent. They're very put together, they're very articulate, they're very confident, absolutely, right? And then the other parent who would be targeted or maybe completely alienated, they might appear to be really frantic and disheveled and they're just a mess. Well, wouldn't you be, right? If your kids haven't spoken to you for a year, they tell you they hate you, they call you by your first name, all of these things that happen in alienation. I mean, you would be a mess. And that plays into the narrative that the alienator has probably told teachers and administrators about you. Look out for the other parent. They're crazy. And, our child doesn't want to see them. They haven't talked to them for a year. And it all kind of weaves together to make this perfect storm, right? And the teachers and the school administrators, they just haven't been trained any differently, right? So they're just knowing what they're seeing and experiencing. And so that's part of what we talk about in the training, is to, not make your decisions on how you treat the parents just based on what you see on the surface. It really,
in your work in Texas, I know here in Polk County, there are the program of child advocates. I wonder if a similar system design for having, you know, how, what do they call it? What do they call it? Parents, when a child has a advocate in the system, Danica, you were one with the
Guardian ad litem.
Guardian ad litem. I mean, I wonder, would that be a potential place to look at how guardian ad litems could be assigned to, you know, parents that exhibit those triggers or key figures that begin to kind of point towards a parental or hostile parenting environment?
It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, I think in the private sector, maybe, not in the state level.
Well, you know, I've seen guardian ad litem in family court situations, and if they're not educated, it's just like everything. If a judge is not educated, if you know, administration is not educated on what to look for, it's kind of like, you know, what are the symptoms?
Right.
The symptoms of, you know, of the common cold, you know, what are the symptoms of you know, anything. If they don't have the distinctions of what the symptoms are, they could easily fall prey into that alternate narrative.
Yeah.
Well, and
I like the idea that you're going there with that, though. Maybe like I'm in the dependency court for guardian ad litems here in Florida, and I don't know that I would want that particular type of situation, but I like the idea of having someone there for the children.
Right. That's what I'm thinking.
Like guardian ad litem.
Right. Something
Maybe
similar.
all the same. Yeah. I like that. I think it's good to have someone there on behalf of kids.
Like a child advocate. I know here in Texas, when we have a custody case, a lot of times a guardian ad litem or an amicus attorney is appointed to the case. But in my support groups, I can say that a lot of our parents are not involved in litigation. They are not going to court. They are just dealing with parental alienation all on their own. And there can be some real serious downsides to going into litigation. So it really is. And, you know, sometimes I'll have a alienated or targeted parent who is struggling with issues in schools, like what we're talking about. And I'll see someone else online tell them, get an attorney and sue the school. And I'm like, no, do not do that.
No, answer to everything.
Like, no, let's work on trying to build a positive relationship with the school. Because I'll tell you, you're gonna get a real big roadblock if you immediately try to go into litigation. So I think the first route for these parents who are dealing with this is, well, like I said earlier, get a good coach who will help you to start building positive relationships with the schools, because I know I did it and it made all the difference in the world. And I've helped other parents do it as well. And it can really, really, really make a difference. And the thing is that if you're a parent, this is the parent side of it, you have to ask yourself, what bottom line, what is the most important thing that needs to happen here? Well, the most important thing that needs to happen here is for my child to have a good, positive experience in school, right? Mm-hmm. It's not about, I want to stop the other parent from being involved, or the other parent is trying to stop me, so I'm going to react to that. And, we're going to, I'm going to make sure that, I've got my rights. And so I'm going to go to the school office and I'm going to bust in the door and say, I've got my rights. How dare you violate my rights? That's not how to do it. You really want to work on trying to build these positive relationships. That's usually the most effective, less stressful way to accomplish the goal of your child having a good, positive school experience.
I agree with you.
And you being involved, right?
I agree with that, but I would, play the advocate. I don't want to say the word devil because I don't like him, but right. I would offer, just to throw it out there, for many parents that are educated and well, versed in how to manage, many parents don't have the resources they need to even know what steps to take. And so when I think about, the underserved, the impoverished parent, that is simply dealing with it. It is when they've got to make a list of which one am I going to do first, get a coach, or, try to make that other parent mad to get them to do what I need them to do. That's where I struggle. And I wonder, what can be done to help those parents, because I think there are a lot of them.
Yeah.
Volunteering.
Would volunteering help? Now, I know there's parents that are busier and they have hectic schedules, but is there ways that they can still find opportunities to volunteer in the school? And for, like you said, when we have either busy parents, sometimes we have impoverished parents, and that would be relatively free for them to volunteer in the school. So that might be a way to help build the relationship. Like Wendy was saying, well, you guys have all kind of been saying, building the relationship and the communication, I think, is what's really key in co-parenting anyway. But it sounds like it really needs to be adopted throughout the school, and where parents are concerned as well. So maybe volunteering, getting involved with the school, letting them get to know who you are, seeing you on a level that you're maybe kind of a peer in a way. I know you're not an employee or of the school board or anything, but it kind of gives them a different angle to come in and do something that's productive.
It's been a while since I've been in the brick and mortar, but many parents, when I was before I went to charter, the last thing they want to do is come into school.
I would like to say something. First of all, well, my kids were raised mostly in private schools. I taught in the public schools. I got to see a little bit of both flavors. My impression is in the public schools, there's not, unless you have a PTA, when they see a parent, especially a parent, they know that there's a conflict going on with custody. It's not a good thing for them to see the parent walk in. Private school, they require parent involvement and volunteerism. So that's and then the other thing I wanted to bring up is when you're healed, you really have to be healed and out of your trauma survival state in order to be of good to anyone, which goes back to what Wendy talked about these a custody coach, a divorce coach, some sort of a coach that I always tell my clients, get a coach before you get an attorney. Because a coach is going to ground you in some, get you grounded, get you from the swirl of the fear, the what if world, and navigate. They're going to advocate for you and guide you because you may not realize that you may not actually need an attorney, but the coach will tell you when it's advisable and when it's not.
Right. And I think that a lot of parents, may know that that's the direction that they need to go and that they should go. And they may just need guidance to the appropriate resources so that they can make that decision. Because many times it's I'm not trying to reference in order to make light of this, but it's the same process when people need to have a counselor, but everybody around them is saying, well, you don't need to do that, or there has to be a healing that takes place, and if they're not healed yet, then they're not even able to see that they need a support system in place, a coach, or I think that there are opportunities to volunteer at the school, but many times parents are afraid because they don't want anybody to know about their background. They don't want, any attention upon them. And so, I think that opportunities like this, it's amazing that this is being recorded, because you may just have that parent that has an opportunity to look at it in the privacy of their own home and get information without feeling like, I hate to say it, that many don't want to be looked at or judged or stereotyped as a parent that is either an alienator or being abused by one.
I just want to acknowledge that gap that Dr. Sally mentioned a little while ago about underserved communities. My daughter teaches in an underserved community, and I can see exactly what you're talking about. Some of the parents are very involved, but I would say most of the parents, she never sees them at all. They, and how do we reach out to them? I mean, I don't have the answer. I'm saying that I would like to know. And I think that's something that
It's a hard one. Yeah.
it is a hard one. I think this is the first, and I've done a lot of conversations like this. I think this is the first time that's ever been brought up. And I think it's extremely important. Really, I really do. I think that that's the first time I've heard this mentioned, and I've done a lot of these. And that's something that we need to talk about and figure out. How do we reach those parents?
I
I
think
like
it has
that.
to take a, I'm so sorry. Was that you,
That's
Wendy?
okay. Go ahead. Go ahead. No.
I was just gonna say, I think it's gonna take the same route that that we use when we're trying to get citizens to vote. I mean, we have to go to them, and
Yeah.
especially if you're talking about underprivileged subgroups, even if you're talking about your corporate subgroups, who, you know, those parents are really busy as well, and they're not typically hands-on parents as well. So it's not just one particular subgroup.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
I think the method in which I'm speaking of is that it's linking with different organizations that can get to these communities, and
Yes.
you almost have to walk side by side. And I'm just
Mhm.
thinking about the days when we did have open houses at schools. You know, even when you have your after school programs that come and set up for their tables, like there should be a table for that information.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even with, if you're at a Title I school, you know, we have to provide resources to parents that will help children academically. And this is definitely
Yes.
in that particular area. So this pocket of information can go into those particular presentations as well.
Absolutely.
It's
That's a
just
great
really,
idea.
it's just really getting the word out. And it's like, you know, your churches, your community groups,
Yeah.
your fraternities, your sororities, you know, they're actively involved in the community. And I think, you know, this is critical. Like this information, I'm just sitting here and I'm floored, and I'm grateful to be a part of the panel, because this is information that I'm just thinking back to how many parents really could have benefited from this
Exactly.
information. And
I'll
still
tell
don't.
you, I'll tell it myself a little bit, but first I want to say I really love this idea about the parenting coach, because it helps bring the parents into a neutral area with someone helping them learn what to say, you know, say this, not that kind of scenario. But what I want to say is that when my children were little, I thought I dropped my kids off at school, and I went to work. I was a single mom. I didn't have a dad that was involved or that I had to keep informed, you know, that just didn't exist. And I was thinking about that, and I'm thinking, well, my mom never participated in my schooling either. So what do we need to learn, or what do we need to show parents that this is really what it should look like? Because I would have never known any of this, that I needed to have this communication, because I've never seen that from my perspective. So I didn't apply it as an adult, as a mom with children, because I'd never seen it. So that might be something that is also part of why parents aren't participating, because we think, okay, well, they're at school, that's their thing.
Yeah.
I'm at work, or I'm at home, I'm
Right.
taking care of little ones at home, I'm doing mom things. So how can we change that mindset?
I think
Oof.
getting information out as early as possible, like in the back to school, you know, the first day of school packets, or even school registration, or back to school night, meet the teacher night, all of those opportunities.
Back to school parenting boot camp.
Right.
Exactly. Exactly.
I like that.
So, I love that, because I actually was talking about a boot camp for parents this morning.
Right.
But also I forget who brought it up. I want to say it was Jasmar, but talking about having community partners, I think that's
Mhm.
super important, and something that we need to look into, because some parents, they are not really involved in school. Maybe they don't come to any of those nights, and we don't know why. But so where are they? Where and how can we get this information to them? And it needs to be just general information, and not accusatory, or
Right.
sound really scary or
Make
overwhelming.
them want to be there, make them
Right.
want to spend time.
Or even provide them information where they may go, I never thought, you know, and teaching co-parenting, I like the piece that talks about things that your kids say and think, but they would never tell you, you know, and sometimes you can put information out to them that goes home, as been suggested, and that parent may read it and go, you know what? And then there's something, if you need more information or you would like some support, then, reach out to Kids Need Both or reach out to family,
Right.
Danica, is there another organization in Polk County that is doing what you're doing in regards to parental alienation? And
Mostly not a particular organization. I know that Family Fundamentals, it's part of the United Way of Central Florida. They've had some guest speakers on that topic, but no, there's really very little information out there. And something that came up to me is that, we talk about giving our child the best childhood that they can have. But guess what? During that, there's a limited amount of time that a child can have a childhood, but there's also a limited amount of time that we get to be a parent of a child. And maybe if we speak to the parents and say that we have something that will make you really get the best out of your experience of being a parent.
As a parent. Yeah,
Right.
I like that a lot. Well, we're on the hour and I want to respect everybody's time, but I would really, really love it if we could do a round robin real quick and maybe give a piece of advice for, thinking, because you work in the school systems. So what are the schools seeing, or any kind of an example like that you could offer for our parents that are viewing? And then also how they can reach out to you and contact you.
Well, I'll go first. The one thing that I would probably offer is that there be some consideration that things are in transition. Things are not the norm currently right now. And so if everyone could take a break and get a get out of jail free card, or get a pass and say, hey, we know that this is where we are, but unless we come together and, make some very, very targeted, intentional decisions about how we co-parent, this thing is not going to get better. It's going to get worse. So, just for lack of a better word, putting aside our differences, if we are, currently in a good place or we're moving to a good place.
Truce.
Yeah, the call a truce. That's the best, absolutely what I'm looking for. And say, let's just call a truce. And both of us attack this right now, together. That's what I would say. And certainly you can reach out to me on Facebook. Compass Smart Solutions is my consulting, and you can find me by just Googling those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sally. You had all of us shaking our heads. Yes, we definitely agreed with that. So, Jasmine, would you like to go next?
Yes. So I think on this topic, I would just encourage every parent, and I just welcome every parent to feel human. There's no perfect parent. And I think some parents aren't involved because they look at the precursor that was given to them and they're like, well, I wasn't taught this,
right.
I didn't see this as a child, and I don't know how to do it. And so I would just say, always take the weaknesses that you have and turn it into a strength. Reach out to the resources. You do better. Once you know better, then do better. So if you know the type of childhood that you would have wanted, be that type of adult for your children. And sometimes, as a community, we have to step in. I know community members who do step in, and they fill that gap when the parents are not able to be there. And I would just say, use your school as a resource. I would say, as administrators, administrators wear several different hats, and there are several different other employees within the school system who can help you. But I would just say, keep an open mind and just reach out, and just reach out to personnel that could help you. And I would just say, on the school side, I would just say, if everyone could just have, that empathy needed in those situations. And it's not just up to the parents to keep the children as the top priority, but it's also educators too. And we do that. And so just like we expect for our parents to do that, all educators, all entities that have a stake in the lives of the children should do so as well. And I can be reached. I actually have a live Facebook show that I do entitled Jazzy Conversations with Jazz, which I actually highlight the different comebacks of individuals from different backgrounds who share that common thread of having a comeback. And that program started by even having a comeback kid initiative in my schools, because I love the underdog, and I love to see when people are able to come back on top. So Jazzy Conversations with Jazz, I can be reached there on Instagram and on Facebook. And of course, if you're in the school system, then you know how to reach our school personnel with that school site.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you. Wendy, are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm ready. So you asked for what advice would we give? And I actually have got two people I want to give advice to, I guess. If you are one of those parents who you can't get the other parent to have a truce with you, if you're really, really dealing with extreme parental alienation, I would say, please join a good support group as soon as possible, because it can really help you and give you some good guidance about starting your school year off right. So contact me if you have an interest in joining a good support group. And then the other advice I would give is to school administrators and educators. Please, please, please get this training into your schools if you can, about parental alienation and about co-parenting. And you've got to have trainings, right? Everybody's got to get their continuing education units, or whatever you call them, where you are. So please, include this in your trainings for your schools. It's so important. And not just for the kids, but, for the teachers and school counselors and administrators. If they know what to do with these situations, it's going to make their jobs a lot easier, because really a lot of them, they just don't know what the heck to do with these parents. What do I do with these, oh gosh, here they come again, it's that one family. So give them tools so that they can do their jobs and not have to deal with this and put so much time into, trying to figure out what to do with these particular families. As far as if people want to connect with me, the best way is to go to my Facebook page, and that is Wendy Perry, Parental Alienation and Co-Parenting Education and Support.
Awesome. Thank you. And I just realized that I told everybody in the beginning of who I was, but I didn't tell them what I did. So maybe I'll take a quick second here. I am the chair for the National Parents Organization here in Florida, and I work with legislation trying to help change laws so that parents can have as close to equal time as possible by enacting a law that would give the rebuttable presumption of equal shared parenting. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm fighting for the 50-50 per se. I would love for children to have 50-50 as much as possible. However, every family is different. So some of that has to be up to the family, how they can work it out. There's different schedules that can be applied. You can do a one day on, 1 day off, 1 week on, 1 week off. There's all different kinds of methods in there. So what I want is for parents to be equal in the eyes of the law. When they're equal in the eyes of the law, parenting time becomes more natural and that allowance. So let's start with the big one first, and let's make sure that both parents are equal there in the eyes of the law, so that there is no more of this debate, trying to figure out what does that mean as far as parenting time. So parenting time is important. I advocate wholeheartedly for children to have access equally to both parents. I wish I had that chance when I was a child. So that is what my mission is to make sure that kids do have access, which is why I work so closely with Danica, and I totally love our mission of kids need both, because I truly believe that is absolutely a necessity. So Danica, I want to toss it over to you if you'd like to just kind of add a little bit of a tidbit, and we'll wrap it up.
Okay, so if I had some advice, I'd say be a light. Be a light to your children. Don't put people in the middle by trying to set the record straight. We know they've been hearing bad things about us. We don't need to put them in the middle. It makes them feel awkward, and it actually pushes you away from them. So be a light and be involved. Don't hide. Don't. Sometimes we're tempted to fade away. out of our children's lives and out of the school life. But we must stay involved by being people who people want to be around, who our children want to be around, and all that. So that's all I wanted to say. And I also wanted to, I know, Dawn, we've been talking about what next month's topic is going to be like, and you might have a couple of people that we want to bring to the panel.
Yeah, that's going to be an exciting conversation. So I do want to tag on what you just said about that little piece of advice. I want to say, and this might be a topic that we speak on more later, but I think it's important that we have unconditional positive regard for your ex-spouse, for the mother or father of your child, for the school systems, everybody that is involved with the child. We need to start having more unconditional positive regard. You do not have to like that person. We're not saying you need to start doing things with them, but if you carry unconditional positive regard, your child is going to learn that. They're going to emulate that, and they're going to be able to deal with the conflicts and these problems better themselves by learning unconditional positive regard from their parents. So I think that's an important thing. Next month I think it is, the topic is on unconditional positive regard and co-parenting as well. We might be bringing in, I'm hoping to bring in somebody that has written a book on a specific topic. I don't want to give it away yet because I'm afraid that I haven't talked to him. So hopefully we'll be able to make that announcement, but it's a new book that just came out on, okay, I'll say, well, just another way of co-parenting.
Yes.
So anyway, thank you ladies so much. You guys are so amazing. I love what you do and I love what you're bringing. I love just that straightforward authenticity that you're giving to parents in the school system and how to be present in their lives. So, and Danica, I love what you're doing with this whole movement and just bringing this together. We've come such a long way in the last year and a half trying to work towards this, starting from just a conference.
Yeah. And now it's turning into a community
That's awesome.
of our own and a platform for, yeah.
We're so happy you are all part of that now. So welcome to our family and helping us help kids have both parents in their lives. So unless there's anything else, anybody want to add anything at this point?
No.
Okay.
Blessings, everybody. Be well. Stay safe.
Yes.
Well, please come back again. We would love to have you in future panels, so don't go too far. And